Hi, and welcome to my second video on fantastic wargaming designers. Before I give you the last two names on my list, I've got a few honourable mentions because trying to narrow this list down to just 5 people was incredibly hard. Richard Clark and Nick Skinner, better known as the Two Fat Lardies, have designed a host of historical games. These include Chain of Command and I Ain't Been Shot Mum. Richard and Nick's games do a fantastic job of simulating the fog of war and the difficult decisions that generals have to make without the certainty of knowing exactly when and how effectively your troops will activate. For anyone that wants that sort of challenge in their games, check out Two Fat Lardies. Rick Priestley was there in the 70s, riding the tide of popularity for fantasy and science fiction, designing games for his mates with long-term collaborator Richard Halliwell. Rick went on to play a central role in the designing of both the lore and the rules for Warhammer, Warhammer 40k, and Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. Those are games that have shaped the path of the hobby for decades. It's only because I played later iterations of these games that Rick's name hasn't quite made the cut. After leaving GW, Rick went on to design plenty more games. Perhaps the best known of these is Bolt Action. He did this with a certain Italian designer, another long-term collaborator, whose name did make it onto the final list. Allesio Cavatoruri's design philosophy can be summed up with this quotation: "Simplicity is difficult, complexity is easy." Allesio believes that if you have a clear core system without lots of modifiers or fiddly extra rules, then any poor design choices you make are easy to spot because there's nothing else to obscure them. As far as he's concerned, a game with simple rules can still be full of challenge and full of strategy. Allesio started his career translating Warhammer 4th edition from English into his native Italian, which goes some way towards explaining why his rules writing is so clear and precise. When he later got a job as a games designer, he worked with Thomas Perenin of Mordheim fame. And by the time 7th edition fantasy came round, Allesio was the lead writer. He was also project lead on Warhammer 40k 5th edition. After that, he got what was perhaps his dream gig. Allesio is a huge fan of all things Tolkien, and after being part of the team that conceived the rules for the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game, he was given overall control of the game from the Two Towers movie onwards. It's more than 20 years ago now, but this was a game that absolutely exploded for GW. It brought lots of revenue, lots of interest. In fact, loads of people got into the hobby playing the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. For many gamers today, it's still a classic. In fact, despite a recent new addition, the game remains basically the same as it was years ago, showing just how impressive those core rules were when they were first designed. Because of his work on the game, Allesio even got a chance to cameo in the Return of the King movie, playing a dead rider of Rohan on the Pelennor fields. Very cool. When he left GW in 2010, Allesio started his own company called River Horse Games. They produced a range of board and role-playing games and the Terminator Genesis miniatures game. Now, although this sort of disappeared without a trace, it did have a really clever mechanic in it where you could re-roll dice because the characters were travelling back in time. I thought that was a really nice synergy between rules and fluff. In 2012, Allesio helped to design the ever-popular Bolt Action, and he recently helped Warlord to design the 3rd edition of the game, doing exactly what you'd expect, streamlining the rules and helping the game to flow more easily. Allesio has worked several times over the years with Mantic Games, most notably on Kings of War, a game that for many superseded Warhammer Fantasy Battle as the premier ranks and flanks wargame. I want to give you one final example of Allesio's lovely design work. In most ranks and flanks wargames, as a unit takes hits, you start to remove models. Over the course of a game, that can take up quite a lot of time. In Kings of War, you don't. The unit as a whole takes hits until it's sufficiently weakened or destroyed, and then the whole unit is removed from the game. The effect of this is to really speed up the gameplay and keep things moving. Another game that Allesio has been working on recently for Mantic is Epic Warpath, which I am really keen to see. After 6 months design work by Matt Gilbert, Allesio has been brought in to edit and tighten rules and make sure that everything is streamlined within an inch of its life. Given Allesio's never-ending pursuit of clarity and fun mechanics, I suspect that this is another game that lots of us will soon be playing. After working as a writer and editor on a number of Warhammer 40k role-playing games, Alex Davyy got a job as a games designer. It's interesting that whilst researching this video, I found example after example of games designers who didn't get a job in that role to start with, but took an alternative position within a company so as to get their foot in the door. Something to bear in mind for all you aspiring games developers. Alex Davyy was lead developer on Star Wars X-Wing, Star Wars Armada, and Star Wars Legion. That's 3 games that I have played and loved. Whilst this list is shorter than a lot of other designers, I feel that all 3 of these games have made a really significant impact on the gaming landscape. And even if more recent events have taken the shine off their accomplishments, that's not Alex Davy's fault. I think that he did some really sterling work. It's perhaps easy to forget that at its peak, Star Wars X-Wing challenged Warhammer 40k for dominance of the hobby, certainly in terms of revenue in the US. Part of that success was certainly down to the beautiful pre-painted minis, but FFG wouldn't have sold nearly as many units if the game that you played with those models wasn't so much fun. Movement for your ship was decided ahead of time using one of these dials, each of which was tailored to a particular craft. It was a fantastic blend of bluffing and skill and, to be frank, dumb luck. I've played this game with lots of different friends, and I can remember one of them saying to me that he couldn't remember having ever had a game of X-Wing that he didn't enjoy. Star Wars Armada took some of the ideas from X-Wing and scaled them up to create a grander, more strategic game. The ships were bigger, but just as cool looking, and though they moved somewhat slower, their actions needed to be planned further ahead of time. In a clever design, the bigger the ship, the more rounds ahead its actions have to be planned. It's a great way of representing the inertia of some of these colossal vessels and how long it would take for orders to disseminate amongst the crew. It's very good. When Star Wars Legion first came out, I was very happy with it. To the best of my knowledge, it's the first squad level game where you measure movement from the commander of the unit and then simply place all the other models in cohesion around him. As soon as you've done that once, you realise the madness of measuring and moving each individual model. I used to play Warhammer 40k Orcs. I must have spent about 3 weeks of my life measuring and moving boys. There's also the command cards, which depend entirely on which famous Star Wars characters are in charge of your particular army. You play one of these at the start of each round. It determines special tactics you might be able to play, how much control you have over your troops, and who will go first in the round. It's a really clever system. Star Wars Legion rose and fell, but in light of the announcements that have recently come out of Atomic Mass Games, I really hope that it will rise again. And it deserves to do so, because the rules that Alex Davyy designed all those years ago are great and deserve a new lease of life. I wanted to finish this video by acknowledging what a collaborative experience games designing is. For all the great creators that I've mentioned, I'm sure that there are some fantastic other designers who have supported their work. So those are my choices, my top 5. I know that not everyone is going to agree with them, but that's how I feel. In fact, please let me know in the comments who you think I've missed out and why. I hope that you've enjoyed the video. If so, please consider giving it a like or subscribe. I hope to see you again soon. And until then, keep rolling.